Hi, and welcome to another edition of Jason's Online Outreach. This one is a little different today. It is not live. I recorded this in my garage. And today we are going to talk a little bit about fishing line, and also I'm going to teach you a couple knots that you can use to get out there and do some practicing at home with tying knots and hopefully to get you fishing. We are going to talk about three different types of fishing line. First, we're going to talk about monofilament, fluorocarbon, and braid. Now, monofilament has been around for about 50 years, a little more than 50 years. It has a lot of great properties. It is not very visible in the water column. It floats, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on your application. It stretches, so when you set the hook in that big fish, there is a little play in that line, which some people prefer. Other times it could be an issue. And it is very strong. It's abrasion resistant, which means it's difficult to cut if you're pulling it through weeds or it's bouncing down swift moving water over rocks and things. And it comes in a whole variety of different thicknesses or poundages or tests. I have three that I just happen to have lying around my house. I've got some 6-pound, which is really good. I have that on my ultralight. I use that as a leader on my fly rod. I have some 10-pound of the exact same stuff. 10-pound is pretty middle of the road for me. I will be using this for most of my spin casting when I want to be using monofilament. And I also have some 20-pound stuff. This, I don't remember why I bought it, but it can be a great backing if I want to put it on my reel and then add other line like braid or fluorocarbon because some of those lines are a little bit slicker and they need a backer. I could also use this if I were trying to go catch something a little bigger. Next, we're going to talk about fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbon has been around for a little bit, but it's gotten its popularity in about the last 10 years or so. It has become more pliable and castable, which means it's a little bit less stiff, and it's able to be worked while fishing a little easier. It is incredibly invisible. This is some 12-pound fluoro that I just put this on my wife's rod. I restrung reels the other day. It is very invisible. There's almost no stretch to it, which I really like. When that fish grabs a hold, you set the hook, you're there. The rod is your bending action at that point. It also sinks, which for a lot of the fishing that we do a lot of casting from shore, pulling or throwing out rapalas and stick baits and jigs and things like that. So that doesn't bother me at all that it sinks. It is not quite as abrasion resistant as mono, but I really like that it is not overly stretchy. Lastly, we're going to talk about braid. Braid is something I have on a lot of my rods. This has been around the longest. The old timers that have been fishing forever. I mean, more than 5-10 years. I'm kidding. But this has been around for well over 50 years. It is very, very strong despite its diameter. So it's pretty thin and very strong. You get a lot of strength out of braid. It is typically pretty visible in the water column, and that can be an issue, especially if you're going after something like a bass species, which has very good eyesight. Typically on some of my rods, I like to troll with braid a lot. I'll put a piece of mono or fluorocarbon as a leader on the end to give me some invisibility between my braid and my lure. You can take advantage of any of these properties. Like I said, braid is a main line. You can add a fluoro leader, and they all have great characteristics to keep in mind when you're trying to pick out what kind of line you're going to put on your reel. Now, we are going to talk about two different knots that I want you guys to practice. So I'm going to flip the camera down. And we are going to use, I just had this in my garage. It's a little clip, but it's big enough to show you how to tie this first knot. This first knot is called the uni knot. And the first thing you're going to do is take your line. This is just some paracord that I had laying around. And you're going to put it through your eyelet of your hook. You are then going to bring this around, making sure you have enough of a tag end. The tag end is the short end. And then you are going to loop it around the double here. And I'm going to loop it 4 times. They say the thinner your line, the more wraps you need to do. But this is pretty big stuff. From here, I'm going to pull on my tag end, my short end, and get her kind of purdied up. Now that is a long loop to have between my knot and my hook. But not to worry, because you pull on the long line, and that knot cinches right down. As we get to the end, might have to give her a good crank. Use your fingers a little bit to help. And as you get her close to the end, you can make it purdy and then pull on your tag end to really tighten her up. Now that is a very universal knot. The uni knot is capable of being used in pretty much any lure or hook application. It's also a great knot to tie one line to a second line. Now, we're going to set that aside. And this was my other hook choice that I had lying around. And this we're going to use to learn the palomar knot. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take your line and you're going to double it. You're going to put that loop through the eyelet of your lure or your hook, and you are going to tie an overhand knot, just kind of like you're tying your shoes. Now, the important part here is don't cinch it down too much. Get that lure or that hook to go through your main loop, and then as you pull up, make sure everybody's cinching up together well. Might have to use your fingers to get her really working. But this is a great knot for braid, which can be a little slippery, or anything that's got a really big eyelet hook or lure. So I hope you've enjoyed learning about our uni knot and our palomar knot. If that was a little confusing or tricky to understand, there are plenty of other online resources that you can learn more knots. If you find a very interesting knot and you practice it, show me a video, show me a picture. You can post it in the comments below. And one final thing, for those of you around the Sioux Falls area, Family Park has just received over 700 catchable rainbow trout. Gavin's Point National Fish Hatchery just released them the other day. So there's a great opportunity to go out and catch some nice fish. Just remember to keep your social distancing 6 feet apart and stay safe, and I hope you catch a big one. We'll catch you next week. Thank you.